What's going on, everybody? It's Jeff Iafrate from Crunch Time, and I thought it'd be a fun video to break down Mike Greenberg's comments regarding the Detroit Lions and how their window is closed. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Window is closed, according to ESPN's Mike Greenberg. And I have some comments here that I want to go through and break down and tell you guys why I disagree with it completely. Maybe you do as well. Maybe you don't. Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. It does support us. We're live every day, weekdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Let's go through this. Okay, so he had a couple comments here that I want to go through. I thought this was pretty funny here. And, I went through, did some research. I want to bring you guys some of that research and see whether or not this makes sense. The first thing he said when he went on his own show and, basically said the Lions missed their shot. The window's closed. Well, he said, I think they're getting surpassed in their own division. I think they missed their window. He says, you missed that chance. You missed that chance. Green Bay is better. He mentioned the Bengals. He mentioned the Bills. He mentioned other teams in NFL history that made a run and then proceeded to fall off the following year. Well, I have an explanation of why I think the Lions are different. And I don't think the Lions are completely like those teams and why I think some of those points he made were flawed. And we'll start with the first one. How he thinks they're getting surpassed in their own division. Well, Greenberg, based on what? Based on what? Free agency? Because the Packers signed Josh Jacobs? And they got McKinney, the safety from New York, who I like a lot. But still, I mean, what are we doing here? The Lions, did they have anybody? DJ Reader, Carlton Davis, not bad additions. So because they didn't get Danielle Hunter, apparently they regressed. They regressed and they have no hope to make a run in the NFL. I just think that's so off base. And when you really look at this thing, and if you're a bettor, you bet on FanDuel, whatever you bet on. When the odds come out, the Lions will be favorites. That's how that works. They were the best team going into the offseason. The draft hasn't even started yet. Just wait till the draft. I promise you the Lions will have the best odds. So based on that, they're going to be favored. I think they're the better team still. Jordan Love has had 1 year, and I like Jordan Love, but he's had 1 year. So to your point, Greenberg, how are we going to base 1 year off and determine the rest of Jordan Love's career? We got to see it. The Lions are better than every other team for a couple reasons. One, they draft extremely well, which I'll get into in a little bit, why I think drafting matters the most when you talk about sustained success in the NFL. The other thing is they did sign free agents, Mike Greenberg. They did, and they got better. The Packers got Josh Jacobs. The Bears bought, and of course, Xavier McKinney. The Bears bought a whole new team, which I'm curious to see how that experiment goes. Because, again, Ryan Poles can't draft, and the Vikings don't have Kirk Cousins. So to me, it's going to be a two-team race to win that division. I still think the Lions have the advantage there. And if you want to bring up that, the Lions lost to the 49ers, they had them dead to rights, is the words he used. Dead to rights, which he is correct. They did. They had a 17-point lead at halftime. What about the Packers? We're going to let them get away with what happened against the 49ers? They should have won that game. It wasn't as depressing as the Lions loss because, of course, they led it by 17. But the Lions up by 17 was more convincing that they were the better team. The Packers had every right to come out of that game with a win and make an NFC Championship game. Tom Grossi, if you're watching, you'd even agree. So let's not let the Packers get away with losing that game, but the Lions being up 17 in an NFC Championship game, their window's closed. Well, let's go through the teams that he mentioned, kind of referring to the point he made about why it's hard to make it back to where you were the previous year. So we'll start with the Bengals. The Bengals made the Super Bowl, lost to the Rams, and the next year made the AFC Championship game and lost to the Chiefs. And then the year after that was, of course, this year where Joe Burrow was hurt. So you can't really count this year. But the 1 year we have after the Super Bowl, they were right back in the AFC Championship game and lost to, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So I think that's a fair loss. They still were in the championship game. Let's go to the Bills. Remember the Bills? They went to the AFC title game, lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. What happened after that? Well, they made it to the divisional round the next year, lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Made it to the divisional round the next year, lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. Made it to the divisional round this year, lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. So, and I could be wrong here. Does the NFC have a Kansas City Chiefs-esque team? No, they don't. So that point, I think, was a little skewed too, because the AFC is much more difficult to make a run like that. We all acknowledge that. Patrick Mahomes owns that whole entire conference. So it's not the same. So the Bengals and Bills, despite not making it quite where they were, the Bengals were a step away from the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs, now a dynasty. And the Bills, they've been losing to the Chiefs and the Bengals. So, and I think the 49ers aren't as good as those teams. I just don't. You could argue the Bills, but definitely not the Bengals. I would take the Bengals over the 49ers. So, yeah, I think that point isn't even correct when you're making the comparison to the Lions either. When you look at the Lions and why they're different, Brad Holmes has done a good job of identifying talent to the draft, which honestly, you look at GMs in the NFL, that's how you build sustained long-term success. You name me a good team, I'll name you a good manager, a good general manager. You name me a team that's won for quite some time, I'll name you a good general manager. You bring up the Chiefs, well, Brett Veach, look at the talent they found. L'Jarius Sneed, 4th-round pick. Chris Jones, you can keep going. Nick Bolton. There's talent all over the place, and they've drafted players. So of course they have Patrick Mahomes. So that's a different example. But you keep going. You could bring up the 49ers. Remember the 49ers made the Super Bowl with Jimmy G. What happened after that? They went right back to the NFC Championship game twice. And they got Brock Purdy. And they're back in the Super Bowl. So that was with 2 different quarterbacks. And quarterbacks that some would say are a system quarterback. I think Brock Purdy's better. But still, the 49ers have proven with great drafts, with making the right trades at the right time, acquiring a Christian McCaffrey, you can sustain that window. The Lions are just entering their window. That's obvious. They made a run this year in the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs last year. So what's going to happen all of a sudden, Greeny? That's where I'm confused. Do the Lions have a pick in this year's draft? Do they have money to spend? Oh, they do. Oh, they did. So that's where Greeny loses me, is when you try to say the Lions window's closed. Although I agree that a window in the NFL is a real thing, it doesn't apply to the Lions, because the Lions, their window is just opening. They're going to have to pay players down the line. That's when it gets tough. But guess what? When you have a general manager like Brad Holmes and you can draft talent and hit on players as much as he can, you can sustain that window. Remember Tufunga, safety for the 49ers, went down with an injury. Who stepped up and made plays in their postseason run? Jair Brown, who was a safety John Lynch drafted. So when you're a good general manager and you can draft talent, that makes things a lot more flexible. And when we're talking about the window being open, the 49ers trading for Christian McCaffrey to extend their window and make a run, the Lions haven't made a trade like that yet. Who's to say they won't make a trade this year at the deadline? That's really the next step of this whole thing. The Lions are now officially contender. Like, don't act like, oh, they had their shot, it's over. That is blasphemous. That is a ridiculous statement to make. If you really do your research on what the Lions are building, this is again injuries. That is a real thing. If someone gets injured, of course things are going to go off the rails. But if we're talking about as a team, what are you talking about? They have Ben Johnson back. Jared Goff's playing the best football of his career. They still have the best offensive line to me in football. Their defensive line got better. All 3 levels of their defense got better by DJ Reader being acquired. Yeah, the other side of Aiden Hutchinson needs to be addressed. I agree, but guess what? They made the NFC Championship game and led by 17 without one. And without DJ Reader. Without Carlton Davis. I mean, what are we doing here? The Lions window is open, and it's going to be open for quite some time. The other important thing about whether or not the Lions will have sustained success is whether or not you have one of the best coaches, offensive coaches, preferably, because that's been really the mold of having that type of success in the NFL. You bring up the Bengals, Zach Taylor. You bring up the Chiefs, Andy Reid. Coaching matters. The 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. Coaching and quarterback play That's also what matters on top of general managers being able to draft talent, acquire talent. And I think Lions fans would agree that Dan Campbell has shown to be one of the best coaches in the NFL. Now, can he sustain that? I believe he can. But that's going to be a big part of determining whether or not the Lions will have, again, long-term success. Can Jared Goff play at the level he's been playing at? Again, that's going to determine whether or not the Lions have long-term success. If Dan Campbell is the coach Lions fans think he is, and Jared Goff is the quarterback Lions fans think he is, on top of Brad Holmes being able to acquire draft talent, and with Dan Campbell and his coaching staff's ability to develop talent, yeah, they will be back. They will be a team in the NFC that will always be contending. It comes down to that. 3 things, guys: quarterback play, head coach, and general manager. That's what matters. That's how you have long-term success. Like, Brad Holmes finding talent is everything. But if you have those 3 things correct, and not just correct, but you believe in those 3 things, and those three factors of your football team are all at a high level. Quarterback play, like I said, head coach and general manager. Yes, guys, you will have long-term success. Now, whether or not that ends up in a Super Bowl is to be determined. But to act like they can't make the NFC Championship game again, what are we doing here? So I don't want to hear, the window's closed. They missed their opportunity. The Packers have passed them up. No. Packers got to show me. That's what they got to do. Jordan Love has to go out and do what he did last year. And the Lions have to have some sort of significant regression for that to happen, because they're still in the driver's seat for this division. They're still one of the best teams in the NFC. You can't tell me any other team's better than the Lions besides the 49ers. If you want to say Eagles, cool, go prove it. 2 new coordinators. They bought a whole new roster in free agency. Let's find out. But here's the thing about the Eagles. At least Howie Roseman can draft. Now, if you want to bring that up, that's fair. But the 49ers and Lions are the 2 teams that are going to be battling at the end of the year. That's how I see it happening. And for Greeny to say that their window is closed, that is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Their window was just opening. Book it. Book it. I wanted to address that because it really, I think I've heard this more than just once. And I just think it's such an absurd thing to say. Like, go look at Brad Holmes' drafts. I mean, and it's not even, again, he's going to miss at some point. He probably, I mean, seriously, he's human. But at the rate he's hitting, you're always going to be able to replace players. That's what great general managers do. You can find us weekdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. We're live. We'll discuss things like this. And, of course, you can follow me on all social media platforms at Jeff Iafrate. You can follow us on social media as well at Official CT Pod and at Official Crunch Time on TikTok. Don't forget, subscribe, like the video. It helps us. We're trying to get to 10,000 before the draft. Until next time, I'll catch you guys.